James Stewart finally breaks silence on Gary Cooper. Hey, guess what? James Stewart finally opened up and talked about his old pal Gary Cooper after keeping quiet for so long. James Stewart was born James Maitland Stewart on May 20th, 1908 in Indiana, Pennsylvania. He grew up in a really tight-knit small coal mining town in Pennsylvania, and that simple, close community life really shaped how he saw the world, teaching him strong values like honesty and hard work. His dad, Alexander Stewart, owned a hardware store right in town, and everyone expected little Jimmy to take over the family business one day, just like the generations before him. From when he was super young, Jimmy showed he was disciplined, always polite and courteous to everyone, and very responsible. Those traits stuck with him forever and made him the kind, dependable guy we saw both on screen and in real life. He was also really talented with music. He loved playing the accordion, practiced a lot, and even joined in school plays and local shows. But back then, he never dreamed acting would be his job. Jimmy went to Princeton University, where he studied architecture seriously and planned to become an architect like he was supposed to. While he was at Princeton, he got pulled into theater plays and music groups, and he discovered he had this natural gift for performing that surprised even him. Being part of the university's famous Triangle Club put him on stage for the first time and connected him with creative friends who encouraged him and helped change his whole path. After he graduated in 1932, Jimmy decided to drop his architecture dreams and move to New York City to chase acting on Broadway stages. His early theater work showed off his raw, real honesty and how he could show deep emotions openly, which made him stand out from all the super-polished and fancy actors of that time. Hollywood spotted his talent pretty quickly, and Jimmy signed a contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer to start making movies. His first few films built up slowly but surely, with small parts that let him grow step by step. Unlike a lot of other stars who jumped right into big roles, Jimmy didn't look like the typical tall, dark, handsome leading man right from the start. He was super tall, a bit awkward and gangly in how he moved, and just very plain and unassuming in a nice way. But movie fans loved how real he felt. He seemed like an ordinary guy you could know, and that made him super likable. Movies like You Can't Take It With You in 1938 let him mix silly humor with warm, heartfelt kindness, and that combo won over both tough critics and everyday people watching at the theater. The late 1930s and early 1940s were the years when Jimmy really shot up to become a major star everyone knew. Teaming up with director Frank Capra was one of the biggest things that happened to him. They clicked perfectly. Together, they made some of the most loved and important American movies ever, including Mr. Smith Goes to Washington in 1939. In that film, Jimmy played a young, idealistic senator who fights hard against dishonest corruption in government. That role locked in his image as a hero who always stood for truth, fairness, and real democratic values, and it got him his very first nomination for an Academy Award. In 1940, Jimmy won the Oscar for Best Actor for his role in The Philadelphia Story. It was a smart, classy romantic comedy full of witty lines, and it proved he could handle fancy humor with perfect timing and switch between serious and funny so easily. Right at the peak of his huge fame, Jimmy made a choice that made him different from almost every other big Hollywood star. In 1941, right after the United States joined World War II, he signed up and enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Force. He was already a licensed pilot who loved flying, and he felt a strong duty to serve and protect his country. He became the very first major American movie star to wear a military uniform and go to war during that time. Jimmy flew dangerous combat missions over Europe in bombers, completed over 20 missions, rose through the ranks to colonel and later brigadier general in the Air Force Reserve, and earned medals like the Distinguished Flying Cross for his bravery. The whole wartime experience changed him deeply inside, adding a layer of seriousness, quiet strength, and real emotional depth that made his later acting even more powerful. After the war ended, Jimmy came back to Hollywood as a much different person than when he left. The sweet, innocent charm from his early movies now had real-life wisdom, tough experiences, and thoughtful quiet mixed in. You could really see this new side starting with It's a Wonderful Life in 1946, directed by his friend Frank Capra. When it first came out, the movie only did okay at the box office and wasn't a huge hit right away, but over time it became one of the most beloved holiday classics ever. Jimmy played George Bailey, a good man who gets crushed by despair and feels like giving up, but finds hope again through love, family, and the help of his whole community. People now call his performance one of the greatest in all of film history because it captured how real people can feel broken but still bounce back. That role really reflected Jimmy's own struggles and honest feelings after coming home from the war. In the 1950s, Jimmy started an amazing partnership with director Alfred Hitchcock that changed how fans saw him once more. Movies like Rear Window in 1954, Vertigo in 1958, The Man Who Knew Too Much in 1956, and Rope in 1948 put him in darker, twisty psychological stories. Especially in Vertigo, Jimmy gave a creepy, intense performance full of obsession, deep fear, guilt, and complicated moral questions. It was a huge shift away from the wholesome, good-hearted characters he played before. Those Hitchcock films let him stretch his talents in new ways and proved he was one of the most talented and flexible actors in movie history. Jimmy's career stayed strong into the 1960s when he moved into Western movies and cowboy roles. He made some great ones with director Anthony Mann, like Winchester 73 in 1950 and The Man from Laramie in 1955. In those stories, he played tough, rugged men who faced hard moral choices, violence, and justice in harsh, wild frontier lands. He brought a thoughtful, deeper feeling to Westerns instead of just action, and that style inspired so many actors who came after him. When he got much older, Jimmy started acting less and less, carefully choosing only roles he really wanted to do. He received tons of honors over the years, including an honorary Academy Award for his lifetime work, the AFI Life Achievement Award, and even the Presidential Medal of Freedom from the government. But no matter how many big awards he got, Jimmy always stayed the same soft-spoken, humble, down-to-earth person who first charmed people decades earlier. Back in his younger Hollywood days, there was lots of sparkle and romance gossip around him all the time. As a popular leading man, his name was always linked in rumors with beautiful, talented actresses from the studios. The movie companies, gossip magazines, and fans were super curious about why he didn't settle down and get married. He seemed much more comfortable playing romantic, devoted guys on screen than actually committing to one person in his real life. While many other stars rushed into marriages early on, Jimmy stayed a single bachelor well into his middle-age years. He protected his freedom and kept his private life very quiet and out of the spotlight. It surprised everyone when he finally decided to get married at the age of 41. Lots of people thought he might never do it. That big moment happened in 1949 when he married Gloria Hattrick McLean, a former model who was elegant, poised, and full of warmth. They got married on August 9, 1949, at Brentwood Presbyterian Church in a small, intimate ceremony with family and close friends. She brought real stability, love, and a calm home life into his world after years of being alone. Their marriage changed so much for him, not just personally, but in how he balanced fame, family duties, and doing what was right. He threw himself completely into being a loving husband. He also stepped up as an amazing father right away. He officially adopted Gloria's two young sons from her earlier marriage, Ronald, who was about 5, and Michael, who was about 3, and raised them with all his heart as if they were his own from birth. He gave them the same guidance, protection, love, and support he would give to any child. A couple years later, the family grew even more when Gloria and Jimmy had twin daughters together, named Judy and Kelly, born in 1951. Their home became a happy, grounded place full of kids and normal family life. It was so different from the glamorous, busy movie world he worked in. No big scandals, just quiet commitment. Together they created a strong, loving family built on real care. It focused on sticking together through everything, being loyal no matter what, and having a true sense of home and belonging that lasted way longer than any spotlight or fame. For decades, James Stewart and Gary Cooper were like two giant figures in classic old American movies. People loved comparing the two tall, lanky stars, but you almost never heard them talk openly about each other in public. Jimmy was known for being so humble and reserved that he usually avoided those comparisons and stayed quiet about other big legends. But when he finally shared his thoughts about Gary Cooper, his words were full of warm admiration, deep thinking, and true personal respect. It showed just how much Gary influenced Hollywood, and even helped shape Jimmy as an actor and person. "People always tried to put Gary and me in the same sentence," Jimmy said in a thoughtful, quiet way once. Tall, lanky fellows from the Midwest playing ordinary, everyday men on screen. But Gary had something special that you just can't teach or fake. He had this amazing stillness and calm presence. When he stood there doing absolutely nothing, you still couldn't take your eyes off him. Jimmy explained that Gary's real power came from holding back and using restraint, something Jimmy himself worked years to learn and get right. While other actors filled every moment with lots of talking or big movements, Gary trusted silence and let the audience come closer naturally, instead of forcing it. Jimmy admitted that early in his own career, he studied Gary's work very carefully, not out of competition or jealousy, but pure respect and wanting to learn. "I'd watch him in pictures like Mr. Deeds Goes to Town or Sergeant York and think, how does he make it look so easy and natural?" Jimmy remembered fondly. He wasn't acting at the camera or pushing hard. He was just being real in the moment. That's a lot harder than it looks to do well. Jimmy understood that Gary's acting came from true authenticity and never from showy tricks, and that honest way connected deeply with people going through tough times like the Great Depression, war, and big changes. Their careers happened side by side in many ways, but their personal journeys were different. Jimmy happily gave credit to Gary's strong moral presence on screen. When Gary Cooper played a good man, "You believed in goodness again?" he said warmly. He didn't preach or lecture anyone. He didn't push ideas hard. He just stood for something solid and true, and that was powerful enough on its own. Jimmy felt Gary really lived the American ideal, not as some perfect fairy tale, but as a regular, flawed man who tried his best to do the right thing when it really mattered most. Films like High Noon showed that quiet strength better than any long speech ever could. Jimmy also thought a lot about Gary's real courage in both his personal choices and his movie roles. Gary wasn't a loud or show-off kind of guy, but he was incredibly brave, Jimmy said. People sometimes forget how much guts it took for him to make certain decisions, especially as he got older in his career. Jimmy really admired how Gary let himself age naturally in movies, showing tiredness, vulnerability, and real human weariness without hiding it. In a Hollywood world obsessed with looking young forever, Gary treated getting older as something natural and even helpful for his characters. Off-screen, Jimmy remembered Gary as a gentle, very private, and completely sincere person. He didn't play the Hollywood game or chase attention, Jimmy said. He just went home to his family. He loved them deeply. He didn't need all the loud noise and parties. Jimmy felt a special connection there because he wanted the same kind of quiet, peaceful life away from gossip columns and fancy events. Both of them serving bravely in World War II made Jimmy's respect for Gary even stronger. "That kind of experience changes a man forever," Jimmy noted softly, and Gary carried that weight with real dignity and grace. In his later years, Jimmy talked about Gary's lasting legacy with clear emotion in his voice. "When Gary died, something special went out of the movies," he said sadly. "Not just another star, but a whole kind of honest truth we don't see as much anymore." Jimmy believed Gary set a high standard for what movies could be: sincerity without sarcasm, real strength without being cruel, and heroism without ego or bragging. You don't replace something like that, Jimmy added quietly. You just remember it and hold on to it. In the end, Jimmy's words showed that Gary Cooper was way more than just another actor from the same time. He was like a perfect example or measuring stick for what good acting could be. If I ever did anything right on screen, Jimmy concluded with feeling, it's because I learned so much by watching Gary Cooper stand there and tell the truth, without even needing to say a single word. By finally speaking out, James Stewart gave more than simple praise. He offered a beautiful, respectful goodbye from one true American legend to another. It reminded everyone that sometimes the greatest things speak the loudest when they use very few words at all. The death of Gloria Stewart on February 16, 1994, marked a quiet but really heartbreaking turning point in the life of James Stewart. He was the actor who showed decency, toughness, and always doing the right thing on screen for so many years. Gloria, his beloved wife of nearly 45 years since their wedding in 1949, passed away from lung cancer at the age of 75. Her loss left a huge, painful, empty space in his life that Jimmy never fully got over or filled again. Close friends who knew him best said losing her completely shattered his emotional balance and sense of direction. His biographer Donald Dewey described Jimmy in those sad days after as feeling lost at sea, a perfect way to show both his deep grief and how confused and adrift he felt without the woman who had been his steady anchor for so long. In the years after Gloria passed, Jimmy pulled back almost completely from the busy world he used to handle so calmly. The famously private actor became even more reclusive, spending most of his time alone in his bedroom at home. He only came out for simple things like meals or short visits with his children, saving what energy he had left and keeping his sorrow very private. This pulling away wasn't just from the public or media. Jimmy gently but firmly closed the door on much of his old life, stepping back not only from reporters and fans, but also from longtime friends, movie colleagues, and other Hollywood legends he'd shared so many years with. But the people closest to him didn't see it as him just being broken by sadness. Friends like Leonard Gershie and Gregory Peck shared a gentler, more understanding view of his final years. They said Jimmy wasn't eaten up by misery, anger, or bitterness. He had simply reached a point where he finally let himself rest after a lifetime of hard work. After decades of always being responsible, disciplined, and holding his emotions in check, he chose peaceful solitude as his way to find calm. For Jimmy, being alone wasn't giving up or defeat. It was a gentle acceptance of how life naturally slows down after such a huge loss. His health started to weaken more over time, too. In December 1995, he ended up in the hospital after a serious fall at home, which showed how fragile he had become. A year later, in December 1996, doctors suggested replacing the battery in his pacemaker to keep it working. Jimmy fully understood what refusing the procedure would mean, but he calmly chose not to go through with it. To many who knew him, that quiet decision said so much about where he was in life. It wasn't from despair or giving up. It was a peaceful, thoughtful choice from a man who had lived a full, meaningful life, loved deeply with all his heart, and no longer feared whatever came next. James Stewart's life came to a gentle end in July 1997 when he died of a heart attack at the age of 89 in his Beverly Hills home. His passing felt more like the calm closing of a long, honorable chapter than a shocking, sudden loss. In death, just like throughout his whole life, Jimmy stayed true to who he was, unassuming, private, and deeply human in the best way. The man who spent decades bringing hope, courage, and comfort to audiences around the world, left quietly, still carrying the enduring love for Gloria, the woman who had always been the true center and sunshine of his entire life.